I am Nick, a 34-year-old software developer from Boston who just wanted one perfect Christmas with family. Recently single, and the only childless sibling, I thought bringing thoughtfully chosen gifts would make up for my supposed shortcomings. I spent weeks selecting the perfect presents for everyone, especially my nieces and nephews, but what should have been a warm family celebration turned into a betrayal I never saw coming. The moment my phone buzzed with those transaction alerts, everything changed. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below and hit subscribe if family drama stories like mine resonate with you. Trust me, you will want to see how this holiday nightmare unfolds. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, family always came first in our household. My parents, James and Linda Wright, built their entire identity around being devoted family people. Dad worked as a bank manager for 30 years, and Mom taught elementary school until retirement 3 years ago. They raised us with constant reminders that nothing mattered more than family loyalty and sticking together through thick and thin. My older brother Thomas, now 38, followed the family playbook perfectly. He became an investment banker, married his college sweetheart Melissa, and promptly produced 3 children, Aiden, Emma, and Jack, ages 10, 8, and 6. They live in a sprawling colonial house just 20 minutes from our parents', visit every Sunday for dinner, and represent everything my parents consider successful adulthood. Then there is my sister Jennifer, 36, who became an elementary school teacher just like Mom. She married Rick, a dependable accountant, and they have 2 children, Sophia and Liam, ages 7 and 4. Their modest but comfortable home sits just 5 blocks from our parents, and Jennifer calls Mom daily, sometimes multiple times. My younger brother Andrew, 32, works as a successful real estate agent. He and his wife Stephanie just welcomed twins, Lily and Noah, 3 months before this Christmas. Their constant exhaustion and financial stress from the new babies became a frequent topic of family conversation in recent months. And then there is me, Nick Wright, 34, single and childless. Until 6 months ago, I was in a serious 6-year relationship with Alicia. We built a life together in Boston, where I steadily climbed the ranks at a growing tech company. The relationship ended when Alicia wanted to start trying for children, and I admitted I was not ready yet. This decision became ammunition for my family, who viewed it as further evidence of my selfishness and unwillingness to grow up. My recent promotion to senior developer brought a significant salary increase, something I was initially excited to share with my family. That excitement faded quickly when their congratulations came paired with comments like, "Must be nice to only have yourself to worry about," or, "Now you can finally help out the family members who actually have responsibilities." These subtle digs had become so normal, I barely noticed them anymore. Family gatherings increasingly felt like performances where everyone had a role except me. Thanksgiving just 1 month earlier featured an hour-long conversation about the astronomical cost of raising children, with pointed glances in my direction. When I mentioned a weekend trip to Montreal I had planned, my mother sighed and said, "Some people have such freedom," while patting Jennifer's hand sympathetically. Despite all this, I was determined to make this Christmas special. I spent weeks researching and selecting personalized gifts for everyone. For my nephew Aiden, a custom astronomy book with his name incorporated into constellations, matching his passion for space. For my niece Emma, a beginner painting set with professional quality supplies after seeing her artistic talent. I found rare baseball cards for Jack, a handcrafted dollhouse for Sophia, and a set of wooden animal puzzles for Liam. For the twins, I bought high-quality developmental toys and personalized baby blankets. The adults received equally thoughtful gifts. For Thomas and Melissa, tickets to a Broadway show they had mentioned wanting to see. For Jennifer and Rick, a weekend getaway package to a nearby bed and breakfast, including babysitting arrangements. For Andrew and Stephanie, I purchased a meal delivery service subscription to help with their new parent exhaustion. My parents would receive the digital photo frame I had secretly loaded with hundreds of family photos, plus a weekend at their favorite lakeside resort. As I packed my car for the 3-hour drive to my parents' house on Christmas Eve morning, I felt genuinely optimistic. The trunk was filled with beautifully wrapped packages, and I had taken the entire week off work to fully engage in family time. Maybe this would be the Christmas where I finally felt like I belonged again. Maybe my thoughtfulness would bridge the growing gap between us. With coffee in the cup holder and holiday music playing, I pulled out of my apartment parking garage and headed home, unaware of what awaited me. I arrived at my parents' two-story colonial home just after noon on Christmas Eve. The house looked like a holiday display showroom. Icicle lights hanging from the roof, illuminated reindeer on the lawn, and an enormous wreath on the front door. Dad had obviously gone all out with decorations this year, something he took increasing pride in since retirement. Mom opened the door before I could knock, greeting me with her signature tight hug. "Nick, finally! Everyone else arrived hours ago." Her tone carried that familiar mix of affection and subtle criticism that I had grown accustomed to over the years. The living room buzzed with activity. Nieces and nephews racing around, siblings and their spouses sprawled across couches and chairs, half watching a Christmas movie. The massive Douglas fir in the corner already had piles of presents underneath, many with expensive-looking wrapping paper and oversized bows. "The prodigal son returns," Dad announced as he emerged from the kitchen, drink in hand. His handshake was firm, his smile genuine enough, but there was something evaluative in his gaze. "How is life in the fast lane treating you?" "Good to see you too, Dad. Work is great." The new position is challenging but rewarding. I kept it brief, having learned that detailed discussions about my career tended to invite comparisons and comments. Thomas approached next, clapping me on the shoulder. "Little brother, must be nice to show up whenever you want. Some of us have been wrangling kids since 6 this morning." He laughed, but the edge in his voice was unmistakable. "I left at 8 and drove straight here," I explained, though I knew it did not matter. In their narrative, my time was always less valuable, my commitments less significant. Jennifer hugged me while balancing her youngest on her hip. "We were just talking about how insane Christmas shopping was this year. The prices! I swear everything costs twice as much as last year. Absolute nightmare," Andrew agreed, joining our circle with a baby monitor clutched in his hand. "Stephanie and I had to cut back on everything just to give the twins a decent first Christmas. You probably did not even notice the inflation though, right, Nick? No kids to shop for." I smiled tightly, choosing not to mention the thousands I had spent on their children's presents. "I noticed. Everything is more expensive these days." Mom directed me to put my gifts under the tree, where I noticed the stark contrast between my neatly wrapped packages and the mountain of presents already there. Many bore expensive store wrapping, with designer labels visible. "Did you buy out an entire store?" Dad joked as I arranged my gifts. "Just wanted to make sure everyone had something special," I replied. "Well, some of us had to be more practical this year," Jennifer said with a sigh. "When you have kids, Christmas becomes about them, not about extravagant adult gifts." I bit my tongue and offered to help Mom in the kitchen instead of responding. While chopping vegetables for the Christmas Eve lasagna, I overheard snippets of conversation from the living room. "The credit card bill this month is going to be brutal," Thomas was saying, "between Christmas and the kids' winter activities." "Tell me about it," Andrew responded. "The twins need a new stroller system, but after Christmas shopping there is no way we can afford it." "Must be nice to have disposable income," Jennifer added, her voice dropping slightly but still audible. "No college funds to save for, no mouths to feed." Mom caught my expression and patted my arm. "They are just stressed about money, honey. Christmas is expensive when you have children to provide for. You will understand someday if you ever settle down." That evening, we gathered around the dining table for the traditional Wright family Christmas Eve lasagna. The conversation repeatedly circled back to the financial strains of parenthood, the sacrifices my siblings were making, and the overwhelming responsibility of raising children in today's economy. "Nick, how was your trip to Japan last spring?" my father asked during a brief lull. "I imagine that cost a pretty penny." Before I could answer, Thomas cut in. "Japan? Must be nice. We were supposed to take the kids to Disney this year but had to postpone. Again, maybe when college is paid for in 15 years. It was a work conference," I explained. "The company covered most of it." "Still," Dad said, "you had the freedom to go. That is worth something." I noticed glances exchanged between my siblings and parents throughout dinner, meaningful looks that seemed to communicate something I was not privy to. Every time I tried to steer conversation toward neutral territory, movies, books, current events, it inevitably wound back to children and finances. As we cleared the table, Mom announced it was time for Christmas Eve gifts, a family tradition where everyone received one present to open before the main event tomorrow. I watched as my siblings exchanged packages with each other and our parents, all accompanied by heartfelt cards mentioning sacrifice, appreciation, and family bonds. When it came time for me to receive my Christmas Eve gift, Dad handed me a small package with a perfunctory, "Merry Christmas, son." Inside was a coffee mug with "World's Best Uncle" printed on it, the exact same mug he had given me last year, which currently sat in their guest bathroom because I had forgotten it on my last visit. I thanked him anyway and watched as everyone admired the thoughtful, often expensive gifts they had received from each other. The evening wound down with more pointed comments about financial strain, more meaningful glances I could not interpret, and a growing sense that something was happening beneath the surface of our family Christmas. I woke up at 6:30 on Christmas morning to the sound of excited children running down the hallway past my childhood bedroom. The twin bed felt too small, the room a time capsule of high school achievements and outdated interests. A shelf of debate team trophies gathered dust next to computer programming books I had outgrown years ago. Mom had kept everything exactly as it was when I left for college, unlike my siblings' rooms, which had been repurposed into guest rooms and craft spaces. Pulling on a sweater, I headed downstairs where my nieces and nephews were already gathering around the Christmas tree, vibrating with excitement. My sister Jennifer was attempting to corral them while Andrew cradled one of the twins, looking exhausted but happy. Thomas and Melissa had taken position on the couch, coffee mugs in hand, while Mom busied herself setting out breakfast pastries. Dad sat in his armchair like a king overseeing his domain, camera ready to document everything. "Uncle Nick, you are finally awake," Emma called out. "We have been waiting forever." "Forever means about 15 minutes, Thomas clarified with a chuckle. "But in kid time, that is an eternity." We gathered around as Dad explained the gift opening procedure. Children first, then adults, one person at a time so everyone could see and appreciate each gift. I sat cross-legged on the floor near the children, genuinely excited to see their reactions to the presents I had chosen. When Aiden unwrapped the astronomy book with his name worked into star patterns, his eyes widened momentarily before he said a polite, "Thank you, Uncle Nick," and quickly moved on to the next package, a gaming console from his parents that completely overshadowed my gift. The pattern repeated with each child, brief interest in my carefully selected presents before something larger and flashier captured their attention. Emma barely looked at the professional painting set, too distracted by the tablet her parents had given her. Jack glanced at the rare baseball cards before setting them aside for the electric scooter from my parents. Sophia said the dollhouse was for babies compared to the elaborate princess castle from her parents. Even the developmental toys for the twins were quickly buried under piles of more colorful, noisy options. I maintained my smile, reminding myself that children were naturally drawn to the biggest and brightest objects. The thoughtfulness behind my gifts might be appreciated later, or at least that is what I told myself. When the adults' turn came, I watched as my siblings exchanged extravagant gifts with each other: designer watches, premium electronics, luxury brand clothing. The contrast with their earlier complaints about financial struggles was jarring, but I kept my observations to myself. "Your turn, Nick," Mom announced, handing me a small, lightweight package. Inside was a gift card to a coffee shop chain, $25 to a place I had mentioned once disliking. "Thanks, Mom. This is thoughtful." "We were not sure what to get someone who has everything," Dad explained with a shrug. Thomas and Jennifer nodded in agreement. When it came time for them to open my gifts, the reactions were similarly underwhelming. Thomas and Melissa seemed unimpressed by the Broadway tickets. "Parking in the city is a nightmare," Thomas commented. Jennifer and Rick gave perfunctory thanks for the weekend getaway before Jennifer whispered something to Rick that made him nod knowingly. Andrew and Stephanie seemed genuinely appreciative of the meal delivery service until Andrew mentioned they had already signed up for a different one. My parents opened the digital photo frame with mild interest, Dad immediately questioning whether it was compatible with their internet setup. The resort weekend gift certificate prompted a strange exchange of glances between them and my siblings. "Very generous," Mom said carefully. Very generous indeed. Throughout the gift opening, I noticed my family members whispering to each other when they thought I was not paying attention. At one point, I clearly heard Thomas say to Dad, "Is he ready?" Only to be hushed and told, "After dinner." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of wrapping paper cleanup, breakfast, and helping the children assemble various toys. I volunteered to help Mom prepare Christmas dinner, a task none of my siblings offered to assist with. While peeling potatoes at the kitchen sink, I overheard fragments of conversation from the living room. "He can definitely afford it. Not fair that we always have to." Agreed. It makes the most sense. Responsibility to the family. Each snippet increased my unease, but I pushed the feeling aside. Christmas was not the time to create tension. Instead, I focused on making the perfect garlic mashed potatoes and helping Mom with her signature roast beef. In the kitchen, at least, I felt useful and included. By the time dinner preparations were complete, the dining room table had been extended to its full length and set with the good china, a rare occurrence reserved for major holidays. I noticed the seating arrangement with a twinge of irritation. I had been placed at the far end, essentially at the kids' table extension, while my siblings and their spouses occupied the prime positions near our parents. "We thought you would not mind," Mom explained when she caught me looking at the place cards. "You are so good with the children, and this way all the parents can talk without interruption." I swallowed my objection and took my assigned seat, wedged between 8-year-old Emma and 4-year-old Liam. Throughout the elaborate meal, roast beef, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, rolls, and 3 different pies, the adult conversation at the other end remained just out of my earshot. Occasionally, someone would glance in my direction, then quickly look away when our eyes met. Just as dessert was being served, Dad stood up to give a toast. He raised his glass, looking around the table with pride. "To family," he began. "To sacrifice and responsibility. To those who understand what it means to put family first, no matter the cost." His gaze lingered meaningfully on each of my siblings, who nodded solemnly in response. "And to new traditions that ensure our family's future remains bright." Everyone clinked glasses, though I noticed my siblings and their spouses exchanged looks that seemed laden with significance. The buzz of my phone provided a welcome distraction from the increasingly uncomfortable atmosphere. Excusing myself to check what I assumed was a work message, I stepped into the hallway and pulled out my phone. What I saw made my blood run cold. 6 transaction notifications from my credit card company, charges at various stores I had never visited, all processed within the last hour. Best Buy, Apple Store, Nordstrom, Toys R Us, Target, and Walmart, collectively totaling over $4,300. My first thought was identity theft. I quickly opened my banking app to freeze the card when a 7th notification appeared, a charge at Macy's for $652.43. The timestamp was 2 minutes ago. Heart pounding, I returned to the dining room, struggling to maintain my composure. The conversation stopped abruptly when I entered, all eyes turning to me. "Is everything okay, Nick?" "You look pale," Mom asked, though something in her expression seemed wary rather than concerned. "I just received several credit card alerts," I said carefully, watching their reactions, for purchases I did not make. About $5,000 worth, at stores I have never been to. The silence that followed was deafening. My siblings suddenly became intensely interested in their dessert plates. Dad cleared his throat, exchanged a look with Mom, and then turned to me with an expression that was not nearly apologetic enough for what came next. "Actually, son, those charges are legitimate," he said, his voice matter-of-fact. "We voted while you were in the kitchen. You do not have kids, so you should pay for the ones who do." I stared at my father, certain I had misheard him. The Christmas lights twinkled merrily in the background. The remnants of our feast spread across the table, and my family watched me with expressions ranging from defiance to mild discomfort. "You voted," I repeated slowly, "to use my credit card, without my knowledge." Dad nodded, taking a sip of his wine as if we were discussing something as mundane as the weather. "It makes the most sense, financially speaking. Your siblings have children to provide for. College funds, activities, healthcare. The expenses never end. You only have yourself to worry about. And your recent promotion," Thomas added, as if that justified everything. "You mentioned the salary increase last month." I looked around the table, waiting for someone, anyone, to say this was an elaborate, tasteless joke. No one did. "Let me understand this correctly," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "While I was making dinner, you all decided to steal my credit card information and charge thousands of dollars to my account?" "Steal is a harsh word, Nick," Mom interjected, her voice soft but her eyes avoiding mine. "We are family. Family supports each other. Your brothers and sister have given so much of themselves to raising the next generation of our family. This is your way of contributing." I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through the charges in disbelief. $4,376.28 so far. "Actually, it is closer to $5,000 now," Jennifer said, having the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "The last few charges probably have not shown up yet." "You took my credit card from my wallet?" I asked, the betrayal deepening with each passing second. Andrew shook his head. We did not need to. You saved your card information on Mom's Amazon and Target accounts last year when you helped her shop. Remember? The information was already there. The memory hit me, helping Mom order birthday gifts for the grandchildren, saving my payment information for convenience. I had trusted my family completely. And the in-store purchases? I asked, already knowing the answer. You left your wallet on the counter while you were showering this morning, Thomas explained. Melissa just took a quick photo of the card. I turned to look at Melissa, who at least had the grace to blush. I told them we should ask you first, she said quietly, earning a sharp look from Thomas. Ask me? You should not have needed to ask me because you should not have been considering stealing from me in the first place. My voice was rising despite my efforts to remain calm. It is not stealing when it is family, Dad countered firmly. And lower your voice. You will upset the children. The children. I glanced at my nieces and nephews, now looking confused and concerned by the tension at the table. They were innocent in all this, and I loved them dearly. But their parents. How long have you been planning this? I asked, a new, terrible thought occurring to me. The uncomfortable glances between my siblings told me everything I needed to know. Since Thanksgiving, Jennifer admitted, when you mentioned your promotion. But we have been discussing the general concept longer, Thomas added, as if honesty at this point was somehow virtuous. It just makes sense, Nick. You have disposable income. We have families to support. Real financial burdens, Andrew emphasized, gesturing toward the twins in their high chairs. Do you have any idea how expensive childcare is? Or how much we have sacrificed for our children? That was your choice, I said quietly, the words escaping before I could stop them. The table erupted in outrage. Choice? Being a parent is not just a choice, it is a responsibility, Thomas nearly shouted. Easy for you to say from your selfish, single perspective, Jennifer added. Some of us actually grew up and accepted adult responsibilities. You have no idea what real sacrifice looks like, Andrew said dismissively. Dad raised his hand, silencing my siblings with the gesture he had used throughout our childhood. Nick, I understand this is a surprise. Perhaps we should have discussed it with you first. But the fact remains that your brothers and sister have real needs. They are raising the future of this family. Your nieces and nephews deserve the best Christmas possible. And I cannot provide that without buying them gifts myself? I asked, incredulous. The gifts you bought were. Mom paused, searching for words. Thoughtful, but not what they really wanted or needed. We know best what our children require. I looked down at my phone again, watching in real time as another charge appeared. $823 at Electronics Superstore. You are still using my card? Right now? I could hear the disbelief in my own voice. Rick is picking up a few last items, Jennifer explained. We figured since we had already started, we might as well complete the children's wish lists. That was when something inside me snapped, not in a rage-filled, table-flipping way, but in a cold, clarifying moment of perfect understanding. These people, my blood relatives, saw me not as a family member but as a resource to be tapped, a wallet with legs, a solution to their financial problems. I see, I said, my voice suddenly calm. And what was your plan for when I noticed these charges? We assumed you would understand once we explained, Dad said, sounding genuinely puzzled that I was not accepting this violation with open arms. This is about family responsibility, Nick. Something you have managed to avoid thus far in your life. Welcome to real family responsibility, Thomas added with a laugh that several others around the table joined. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking slightly with the adrenaline coursing through my body. I reached for my phone, held it up so they could all see me accessing my banking app. Then you will love what comes next, I said. My voice barely above a whisper. Dad laughed again, clearly not taking me seriously. Sit down, Nick. Do not be dramatic. It is Christmas. Without another word, I walked out of the dining room and up to my childhood bedroom. Behind me, I could hear the dinner conversation resuming as if nothing unusual had happened. As if they had not just committed fraud and identity theft against their own family member. In the privacy of my old room, I systematically took action. First, I froze all my credit cards. Next, I called the credit card company's fraud department, explaining that my card information had been stolen and used without my authorization. Yes, I knew exactly who had done it. Yes, I was willing to file a police report if necessary. No, I did not authorize any of the charges. I then transferred most of my checking account balance to a secondary account my family did not know about. I changed all my passwords, email, banking, social media, everything. I packed my belongings and gathered the few gifts I had received, leaving the ones I had brought for them under the tree. Before heading downstairs, I took one last look around the room that had once represented safety and belonging. The debate trophies, the programming books, the faded posters, relics of a person who believed family meant unconditional love and support, not conditional exploitation. Downstairs, the Christmas celebration continued without me. Laughter, music, the clink of dishes. No one had even come to check on me. With quiet determination, I slipped out the front door to my car, loaded my bags, and drove away from the house where I no longer belonged. I made it exactly 2 blocks before I had to pull over, my hands shaking too badly to drive safely. The enormity of what had just happened crashed over me in waves. My own family had conspired to defraud me. They had taken my card information, made thousands of dollars in purchases without my consent, and expected me to accept it as my duty. Worse, they had been planning this for weeks, possibly months. After a few deep breaths, I continued driving, my mind racing through options and scenarios. A part of me wanted to turn around, to believe there had been some misunderstanding, that my family could not possibly have betrayed me so completely. But the evidence was literally in my hand, my phone continuing to light up with transaction notifications as Rick apparently continued his shopping spree, unaware that I had already reported the card as stolen. I checked into a hotel 20 miles away, a modest chain place with a vacancy during the holidays. The young desk clerk gave me a sympathetic look as I checked in alone on Christmas night, but asked no questions. In my room, I turned off my phone after sending one text to the family group chat. I have reported all charges as fraudulent and unauthorized. The credit card company is investigating. I suggest you all prepare to explain why you thought identity theft was an appropriate Christmas gift. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the heating system. I sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by generic hotel decor, and the few possessions I had brought for what I thought would be a loving family Christmas. For the first time since seeing those transaction notifications, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of the betrayal. I had always been the odd one out in my family, the one who chose a different path, who did not follow the marriage and children timeline they considered mandatory. But I had never imagined they saw me as nothing more than a financial resource, someone whose primary value was in what I could provide materially. Sleep came in fitful bursts that night, my dreams filled with distorted Christmas scenes and family members with calculating eyes. I woke early, staring at the ceiling and contemplating my next steps. Around 9 in the morning, feeling somewhat steadier, I turned my phone back on. The screen immediately lit up with notifications. 50, 4 missed calls, 27 voicemails, and over 80 text messages. The calls had started just 15 minutes after I left, suggesting they had continued their Christmas celebration for quite some time before noticing my absence. I started with the text messages, scrolling through increasingly panicked communications. From Dad, Nick, call me immediately, this is not funny. From Mom, honey, please come back and let's talk about this like adults. From Thomas, you need to undo whatever you did with the credit card. The gifts were already given to the kids. Don't punish them for this. From Jennifer, answer your phone. You can't just report us for fraud. We're family. From Andrew, Mom is crying. Hope you're proud of yourself for ruining Christmas. The voicemails told a similar story, though the tone evolved as hours passed. The early messages were demanding and indignant. By midnight, they had shifted to concerned and, in some cases, pleading. My cousin Sarah had called as well, her voicemail shrill with outrage. How could you do this to your family? Everyone is screaming and Christmas is ruined because of your selfishness. Other extended family members I rarely spoke with had also called, apparently enlisted to pressure me into compliance. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all expressing disappointment in my inability to support family without any knowledge of what had actually transpired. The final voicemails, from early that morning, revealed the full consequences of my actions. The credit card company had indeed frozen all charges and begun a fraud investigation. The stores were demanding payment. The gifts that had already been distributed to children were now essentially stolen property. Dad's last message was a strange mix of anger and desperation. Nick, this has gone far enough. You have made your point. Call me back so we can fix this before it gets out of hand. No one needs to know about our family business. But it was Mom's final voicemail that hit hardest, her voice small and confused. "Nikki, please. I do not understand why you are doing this. We are your family. We love you. Please come home so we can work this out." Love. The word rang hollow after what they had done. Was taking advantage of someone financially their definition of love? Was viewing me as nothing but a resource their version of family? As I listened to the messages, more texts arrived in real time. From Jennifer. The credit card company called Rick for questioning. "Are you serious right now? They're treating him like a criminal?" From Thomas. "Dad is talking about hiring a lawyer. Is that really what you want? Legal action against your own family?" From Andrew. "The twins need special formula that we can't afford this month because we have to pay back these charges. I hope you're happy." The emotional manipulation was transparent, but still effective. A lifetime of conditioning to put family first did not disappear overnight. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Was this what family was supposed to mean? Then I remembered the cold calculation in their eyes as they explained their vote. The entitlement in their voices as they justified using my money without permission. The years of subtle dismissal of my life choices. The constant implication that I owed them something for the sin of living differently. With renewed resolve, I called the credit card company again to confirm that the fraud investigation was proceeding. Yes, they confirmed. All charges had been flagged. Yes, the merchants had been notified. No, I would not be responsible for the fraudulent charges once the investigation was complete. Next, I called my bank to ensure all my accounts were secure. Finally, I made the hardest call, to my boss, explaining that I needed a few extra days off to deal with a family emergency. She was understanding, offering support and resources if I needed them. Around noon, unable to avoid it any longer, I called my father. He answered on the first ring. "Nick! Finally! Where are you? We need to talk about this immediately." "I am talking about it," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "I am talking about the fact that my family committed fraud against me on Christmas. That is not what happened, and you know it," he countered. "We made a family decision about family resources. If you had been reasonable about it, if I had been reasonable, you stole my credit card information and spent $5,000 without my knowledge or consent. In what world is that reasonable? You owe this family." His voice rose sharply. "Your brothers and sister have given everything to continue the Wright family legacy. What have you contributed? A few toys the kids did not even want?" His words confirmed everything I had realized the night before. In his eyes, in all their eyes, my worth was measured solely by my financial contribution to their chosen lifestyles. "I do not owe anyone the right to steal from me," I said quietly. "Not even family. Especially not family. So what is your plan here, Nick? To press charges against your own blood? To make your mother cry herself to sleep again tonight? To deprive your nieces and nephews of their Christmas presents?" "My plan is to let the credit card company handle the fraud case, as they would any other," I answered. "My plan is to make it clear that what you all did was wrong, legally and morally. My plan is to establish boundaries that apparently need to be spelled out explicitly." Dad's voice turned threatening. "If you go through with this, do not expect to be welcomed back into this family." The statement should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it felt like confirmation that I was making the right choice. "That is not your decision alone to make," I replied. "But I will not be coming back until there is acknowledgement of how wrong this was and genuine apologies from everyone involved." "We did nothing wrong," he insisted. "We are family. Family shares resources. Family asks. Family respects boundaries. Family does not steal and then justify it." I ended the call as he began another tirade about responsibility and sacrifice. Almost immediately, my phone rang again. Mom this time. I let it go to voicemail. Then Thomas. Then Jennifer. Then Andrew. A barrage of attempts to wear down my resolve. Instead of answering, I sent a single text to the family group. "I will not be discussing this further today. The credit card company is handling the fraud investigation. I suggest you all start figuring out how to return items or pay for them legitimately. I will be in touch when I am ready." Then I silenced my phone, packed my few belongings, and checked out of the hotel. I needed space, perspective, and time to process what had happened and what it meant for my future relationship with my family, if there was to be one at all. As I drove toward Boston, away from the suburban Connecticut world where family obligation trumped basic respect, I felt something unexpected beneath the hurt and anger: relief. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up for myself against the family dynamics that had been slowly suffocating me. The price was high, possibly the loss of my family relationships, but as the miles increased between us, I began to wonder if what I was leaving behind had been true family at all. The week between Christmas and New Year was a blur of practical steps and emotional processing. I returned to my Boston apartment, grateful for the quiet sanctuary of my own space, decorated with just a small tabletop tree and a few tasteful lights. The contrast with my parents' overwrought holiday display felt symbolic of our different approaches to life, their tendency toward excess and appearance, my preference for simplicity and authenticity. My phone continued to explode with messages and calls, now expanding beyond immediate family to include extended relatives and even family friends. The narrative had clearly spread, though in a predictably distorted version. Ungrateful Nick, refusing to help his struggling siblings, selfishly reporting them for using his credit card to buy presents for innocent children. No mention of the lack of consent, the conspiracy, or the entitled attitude behind it all. 3 days after Christmas, my cousin Michael called, the one relative I had always felt somewhat connected to, though we rarely saw each other these days. "Nick, what the hell is going on? I have gotten 6 calls from different family members telling me you ruined Christmas and reported your parents for fraud." I explained the full situation, holding nothing back. Michael whistled low when I finished. "That is messed up, man. Seriously messed up. And they really expected you to just be okay with it?" Apparently, I confirmed. They genuinely seemed shocked that I objected. "Look, I love our family, but that crosses every line. What are you going to do now?" It was the question I had been grappling with since driving away from that Christmas dinner. "I do not know yet. Let the fraud investigation play out for starters. Beyond that, I am still figuring it out." The credit card company moved surprisingly quickly. By December 28th, they had completed their initial investigation, reversed all charges to my account, and begun the process of pursuing payment from the merchants or the individuals who had made the fraudulent purchases. They explained that the retailers would likely contact the purchasers directly for payment or return of the items. Sure enough, that evening brought a new wave of outraged messages from my siblings. The stores had started calling them, demanding payment or return of the merchandise. Some gifts had already been opened and used, making returns impossible. Others had been presented to the children as coming from their parents or Santa, creating a painful dilemma: admit the truth or somehow find the money to pay for them legitimately. Jennifer called me crying, her voice alternating between accusation and pleading. "The children will be devastated if their presents are taken away. Is that what you want, Nick? To punish innocent children?" "I did not create this situation," I reminded her, keeping my voice level despite the attempt at emotional manipulation. "You and Rick did. When you decided to steal my credit card information, we did not steal it. We borrowed it. We were going to pay you back eventually. When? How? That was never mentioned during the big family vote." Her silence confirmed what I had already suspected. There had never been a plan to repay me. The expectation had been that I would simply accept the charges as my contribution to the family. Thomas took a different approach, moving straight to threats. "Dad is serious about the lawyer, Nick. This could get really ugly. Criminal charges for filing a false fraud report. Civil suits for defamation. Is that really worth making a point?" "I did not file a false report," I responded calmly. "My credit card was used without my authorization. That is the textbook definition of fraud. And you can tell Dad that if he pursues legal action, I will be forced to defend myself with the complete truth, including evidence of premeditated identity theft." "You would really do that to your own family?" he asked, sounding genuinely bewildered. "My own family really did this to me," I countered. "I am just responding to actions you all took first." Andrew, perhaps the least confrontational of my siblings, sent a long text message rather than calling. "Nick, I get that you're upset. Maybe we should have asked first. But Stephanie and I are really struggling with the twins. The medical bills, the special formula, the time off work, we're barely keeping our heads above water. We didn't see it as stealing, just as family helping family. Please reconsider. The stores are threatening collections if we don't pay by next week." I did feel a twinge of sympathy for their situation with the twins, but the deliberate planning and entitlement behind their actions made it impossible to simply let it go. I replied with a simple message: "I am sorry you are struggling, but taking my money without asking was not the solution. I would have been happy to discuss ways I could support you all if you had approached me honestly. The most surprising development came on December 30th, when I received a call from an unknown number that turned out to be Melissa, Thomas's wife. Nick? It is Melissa. I am calling from a work phone, so Thomas does not know I am contacting you. Melissa? What is going on? She sighed heavily. I want to apologize. I should never have taken that photo of your credit card. I knew it was wrong, but Thomas was so insistent, and your father made it sound like you would understand once it was explained to you. Did you know they were planning this before Christmas? I asked. Yes, she admitted. Since Thanksgiving. I argued against it. We all did, actually, the spouses. Rick, Stephanie, and I thought it was a terrible idea. But your father was convinced it was the right thing to do, and you know how persuasive he can be. This new information shifted my understanding slightly. Wait, you all argued against it? Then why did you go along with it? Have you ever tried standing up to your father when he has made up his mind? She asked pointedly. Or to Thomas when he thinks he is right? I am not proud of giving in, but I want you to know that not everyone thought this was acceptable. I appreciate that, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. And I appreciate the apology. For what it is worth, things are a mess here. Your parents are oscillating between rage and devastation. Thomas is talking about legal action, but the lawyer he consulted apparently told him they do not have a case. Jennifer and Rick are fighting about how to pay for the gifts, and Andrew and Stephanie are just trying to keep the twins healthy through all the stress. I never wanted to hurt anyone, I said quietly. I just could not let them treat me that way. I know, she replied. And for what it is worth, I think you did the right thing. This family has some seriously unhealthy dynamics that no one has ever challenged before. After we hung up, I sat processing this new perspective. The image of my family as a unified front against me had fractured slightly, revealing more complexity in the situation. The spouses, the people who had chosen this family rather than been born into it, had recognized the wrongness of the plan, even if they had ultimately gone along with it. It did not excuse what happened, but it did suggest potential allies in any future attempt at reconciliation if I decided that was what I wanted. As the days passed, the messages from my family evolved. My mother began sending daily texts that moved from accusatory, "Do this. How could you do this to the family that raised you?" to nostalgic, "Remember how we always made hot chocolate after sledding?" to increasingly desperate, "Please, Nick, just talk to us." My father's communications remained firmly in the angry, defensive category, insisting that I was overreacting to a simple family matter. My siblings cycled through various approaches: guilt, anger, practical concerns about the financial implications, and occasionally, as the reality of the situation sank in, hints of genuine remorse. Jennifer was the first to crack, sending a message on New Year's Eve that actually acknowledged wrongdoing. I should have never gone along with this plan. It was wrong, and I knew it was wrong. I was just so stressed about money, and when Dad suggested it, it seemed like a solution. I am truly sorry, Nick. It was the first genuine apology I had received from my immediate family, and while it did not instantly heal the wound, it did feel like a small step toward possible reconciliation. As I sat alone in my apartment that New Year's Eve, watching the celebrations on television rather than attending any of the parties I had been invited to, I reflected on the events of the past week and what they revealed about my family and myself. The betrayal still hurt deeply, but I was beginning to see it as a necessary breaking point, the moment when long-established unhealthy patterns were finally forced into the light where they could no longer be ignored or excused. My phone buzzed with another message. Andrew this time, the twins' pediatrician, asked why we were so stressed today. I ended up telling him everything. He said what we did was completely out of line and that we're lucky you're not pressing criminal charges. I never thought of it that way until he said it. I'm really sorry, Nick. What we did was wrong, and I have no excuse. 2 genuine apologies in one day. Perhaps the new year would bring the beginning of a new, healthier chapter in our family story, or perhaps the beginning of my life without them. Either way, I was starting to believe I would be okay. 1 month after the Christmas disaster, I stood in my new apartment, unpacking boxes in the unfamiliar space. I had decided to move, partly because my lease was ending anyway, and partly because I needed a fresh start, a place untainted by the phone calls and text messages of the past month. The new place was slightly smaller, but had large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light, a stark contrast to the shadows I had been living in emotionally. The financial situation had been fully resolved. The credit card company had completed their investigation, permanently removing all fraudulent charges from my account. Most of the stores had either received returned merchandise or payment from my family members. My bank accounts were secure, with new numbers and enhanced security measures. On paper, everything was back to normal. Emotionally, the landscape was more complicated. The family that had been my foundation, however flawed, was now fragmented into individual relationships of varying states of repair or disrepair. Jennifer had made the most genuine effort at reconciliation. After her initial apology on New Year's Eve, she had sent a longer email taking full responsibility for her actions without excuses or qualifications. She had paid for the items she had charged to my card, returned what could be returned, and even sent me a check for the full amount as a gesture of good faith, which I returned with a note saying the direct payments to the stores were sufficient. 3 weeks after Christmas, we met for coffee at a neutral location halfway between our homes. The conversation was awkward at first, both of us unsure how to navigate this new territory where the family script had been so dramatically rewritten. "I still cannot believe we did that to you," she said, staring into her cup. Looking back, it seems insane that any of us thought it was acceptable. "What changed?" I asked. "Between when it seemed like a good idea and now?" She considered the question carefully. Seeing it through outside eyes, I think. When the store called demanding payment and accused me of fraud, I was indignant at first. In my mind, it was not fraud because you were family. But the customer service representative did not see it that way at all. She was shocked when I explained the situation, expecting her to understand. Her reaction made me start questioning the whole thing. "And now? Now I am horrified that I violated your trust that way, that I prioritized getting more expensive gifts for my kids over basic respect for you, that I somehow convinced myself it was okay because Dad said it was." She reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but making the gesture. "I am truly sorry, Nick. What we did was wrong on every level. It was not an instant fix, but it was a start. We agreed to rebuild slowly, with clear boundaries. No more conversations about my financial situation. No more comparisons between my life choices and hers. No more family votes about my resources." Andrew and Stephanie had followed a similar path to Jennifer's, though with more focus on the practical challenges they were facing with the twins. During a video call, they had shown me the babies, now 4 months old, and starting to develop distinct personalities, and apologized again for their part in the Christmas disaster. "We were drowning," Andrew explained. "Medical bills piling up, both of us exhausted, Dad offering what seemed like a simple solution. But that does not excuse what we did. The pediatrician really set us straight," Stephanie added. "He said something that stuck with me, that treating family worse than you would treat a stranger is a sign of dysfunction, not closeness." We were beginning to rebuild as well, though with the understanding that their primary focus needed to be on their children and getting their own financial house in order, not on our relationship. Thomas remained the most resistant to genuine reconciliation. His communications continued to contain subtle blame and justification, even when ostensibly apologizing. I kept those interactions brief and factual, unwilling to re-engage with the dynamics that had led to the breach in the first place. Melissa occasionally reached out separately, providing updates and continuing to express her regret for her role in the situation. And then there were my parents, the architects of the scheme, and the most complex relationship to navigate going forward. Mom had pivoted to a heartbroken stance, sending daily messages about missing me and wanting to heal the family, without ever directly acknowledging the wrongness of what they had done. Dad had retreated into stony silence after his threats of legal action proved empty, communicating only through Mom or occasionally Thomas. 6 weeks after Christmas, they requested a family meeting to put this unfortunate situation behind us. I declined, explaining that I was not ready for a group dynamic where I could be outnumbered or pressured. Instead, I suggested meeting just the two of them at a restaurant near my new apartment. The meeting was tense. Dad arrived with a folder full of papers that he referred to as documentation of family contributions, apparently a detailed accounting of everything they had ever done for me, from college tuition to Christmas gifts over the years. "This is not a negotiation or a transaction," I told him, pushing the folder aside unopened. "I am not here to discuss what I owe you or what you think you deserve from me. I am here to establish whether we can build a new relationship based on mutual respect." Mom began crying, a response that would have swayed me in the past, but now felt manipulative in its timing. "We just want our family back together," she said between sobs. "We miss you so much." I miss aspects of our family too, I admitted, but I cannot go back to the old dynamics. What happened at Christmas was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of treating me as less valuable because my life looks different from what you expected. Dad bristled. We never said you were less valuable. We just pointed out that your siblings have greater responsibilities. Which they chose, I countered, just as I chose my path. The difference is that I respected their choices while you used mine to justify stealing from me. The conversation circled without resolution, my parents unable or unwilling to offer the unqualified acknowledgement of wrongdoing that might have begun healing the relationship. We parted with an agreement to think about things and talk again in a few weeks, but I left with little hope for meaningful change. Surprisingly, the experience had strengthened some unexpected connections in my life. My cousin Michael had become a regular texting buddy, offering perspective from someone who understood our family dynamics but wasn't directly involved in the Christmas incident. A few colleagues had become friends after I shared a sanitized version of family drama that had me working extra hours to avoid my empty apartment during the early weeks of January. Most significantly, I had joined a support group for adults establishing boundaries with family members. The stories shared there helped me understand that while my family's actions were extreme, the underlying dynamics were sadly common. Parents who viewed adult children as extensions of themselves rather than autonomous individuals. Siblings who resented different life choices. The expectation that family members were entitled to whatever they needed from each other, regardless of boundaries or consent. In those weekly meetings, I began to rebuild my understanding of what family could and should be. Not an obligation that trumped all personal needs, but a connection based on mutual respect and genuine care. As February turned to March, I felt myself emerging from the shadow of betrayal into something new, not healed completely, but stronger in my sense of self and clearer about my boundaries. The experience had forced me to define my own values rather than accepting the ones imposed by my family system. I established new traditions for myself. Sunday morning hikes in a nearby state park, cooking classes on Wednesday evenings, regular video game nights with friends. I donated to a children's charity, finding a way to support children's needs that felt authentic rather than coerced. I even began tentatively dating again, meeting a woman named Lisa who found my stories about establishing family boundaries impressive rather than off-putting. Jennifer and I had progressed to regular coffee meetings, sometimes with her children, who seemed to sense the fragility of our rebuilding relationship and were on their best behavior. During one such meeting, she asked the question I had been considering myself. Do you think you will ever fully trust us again? I considered my answer carefully. Trust is not binary, all or nothing. I think we are building a new kind of trust, based on honesty and respect, rather than obligation. It is different from blind family trust, but maybe healthier, she nodded slowly. I hope so. I have realized I do not want my kids growing up thinking what we did was normal or acceptable. I want them to understand boundaries and respect, even with family, especially with family. That, perhaps, was the most valuable lesson from the entire painful experience. Family bonds are meant to support and nurture, not to constrain and exploit. True family respects boundaries, acknowledges autonomy, and asks rather than takes. Love that comes with conditions or costs is not really love at all. I still did not know what my family relationships would look like in the long term. Which ones would heal, which would remain distantly cordial, which might fade away entirely. But I knew with certainty that I would never again allow anyone, family or not, to define my worth by what I could provide materially, or by how closely my life matched their expectations. As spring approached, bringing new growth and possibilities, I felt a sense of peace I had not experienced in years. The Christmas betrayal had been painful beyond measure, but it had forced a necessary reckoning, clearing away unhealthy patterns to make room for more authentic connections, whether with my biological family as they evolved, or with the chosen family I was gradually building around me. What about you? Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? Have you experienced the painful growth that sometimes comes from family conflict? Share your story in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more real-life experiences that remind us we are never alone in our struggles. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the strength to stand in your truth, even when it feels like standing alone.